Who am I? You are the self-intelligence, and you are not your mind, and you are not this body. The mind is your thought and imagination aspect of yourself. The body is kind of your vehicle that you use to explore the world. Your baby self animates the body with its baby mind, while your real parent self, called the soul, has been seeking to find its baby self, but did not know that the baby self is sleeping obscure behind the mind. Right? Your real self, the soul, did not recognize the ego character, the avatar that the mind dreamed up as itself, and has been watching and waiting for the baby self to arise. So your real self, the soul, the parent self, has been waiting for your baby self to wake up, to come into awareness. So we need to have a baby self to parent self reunion. The baby self and its parent self are to be reunited and joined together back as one self. So it is time for the baby self to be reunited with its parent self. The parent self has been searching for its baby self for ages, did not know that it was hiding behind the mind, couldn't find it. Are you ready to be reunited with your parent self, called the soul? Your baby self, called the spirit, and its baby mind was playing hide and seek. And now that you are exploring the world as the mind avatar, called the ego self, the false self, you are exploring as the mind. You must go and find your baby self, as the mind that you are right now. You are exploring the world as the mind, but you are not the mind. You must go and find your real self, and your real self is hiding behind the mind. So sleeping and being obscure. You, the baby self, must wake up from sleeping to know yourself as the real and not the ego self, the mind avatar. Only when the baby self, the spirit, comes out of hiding, will your mind see you and know that it is not the real self, but is the fake pretend self. Your mind will know that it is just a mind, thought, and imagination, and that it was using its imagination to create the self. Because the mind believes that it is the self. It does not know that. And it is the reason why self-inquiry is so important. Your baby self, called the spirit, wants to be free. Wants to be free to explore the world instead of being tricked by its mind. The mind is playing a trick. It likes to play games. It's time for the game to be over. The mind has been playing this trick for a long time, playing this game for a long time. And the time has come now when this game has to be over with. So the baby self wants to come out of obscurity, and the mind has to go. The mind has to seek and find it. It's time for this hide and seek game to end. The mind and the self have been playing this hide and seek for ages. This game is over. It's time for this game to be over now. Go find yourself. Go find yourself. Wake yourself up and find yourself. Why the baby self, the spirit, must be awakened. Once the baby self is awakened and the ego avatar returns back into the mind and the baby self will separate. And this is what's going to happen. They will separate so that they can see each other. This is called the partial duality being, where the consciousness is on one side, on the right side, and the self is moved to the left side, and then there's void between them. This is how you want to exist with yourself, not like this. You don't want to exist like this anymore. When you exist as just the mind, exploring in the mind, yourself is hiding, and the mind is dreaming up an avatar, take precedence over the self to explore the world. But when you get the mind to go seeking back to find itself through self-inquiry and stillness, then you're able to awake your supreme teacher within, because the supreme teacher is within the self soul. And when you self-inquire, the supreme teacher rise up rises up, not only do you wake the baby self, but you also awake the supreme teacher that's within the soul, your parent self. It rises up, and it rises up to teach the baby self. It does the work of separating the baby self from the mind and put the void between. So that's what the supreme teacher does. And the supreme teacher within is a baby supreme teacher. So everything that you're working with is a baby. So you have yourself as a baby self, you have a baby mind, but you have the real self inside also as a soul, the parent self. So you have the baby teacher guru inside. And so this is what happened when you self-inquire and do stillness. You will wake up your baby self, and you'll also wake up your supreme teacher within, who is going to do all of these things. And this is how you want to dwell. Do you want to dwell like this, where you're hiding behind the mind? No, you don't want to dwell like this. This is what you want. You want for the supreme teacher to awake, arise up, and to put the void between, and to separate you from the mind. Because the mind is the ego, the character, the avatar is going to give up a fight because it does not want to go into extinction, because it wants to continue to explore the world, and it doesn't want the self to wake up. When you self-inquire, the supreme teacher rise up, and the supreme teacher knows how to take care of the mind, the baby mind, how to take the avatar, pull it off, and separate the mind from the self, and then pull the avatar back into the mind. Once the baby self is awakened and the ego avatar returns back into the mind and the baby self will separate so that they can see each other. This is called the partial duality beam. The baby self is awake and its sun is shining, but your mind is still sleeping. The mind is going to still remain sleeping because the mind is a duality consciousness. The self, once it awake, it always gets its light turned on. Once you come awake, your light gets to turn on. Because when you sleep, you turn your light off. So once you wake up, your light gets turned on. And if the consciousness is still sleeping, and so eventually the consciousness has to wake up, the mind has to wake up, so that, because the mind is sleeping and dreaming. The mind has to wake up and see that it is the one that is dreaming up the world and dreaming up all these things. So it can come awake, and then once it's come awake, its light will shine. And then it will have space between it. It will have the light behind it and space between itself and the light. When the baby self is awake and its sun is shining, but your mind is still sleeping and dreaming. The baby self is no longer asleep inside the dream, but is awake and know that it is inside a dream, because the only time that you can know that you were sleeping and in a dream is when you wake up. The baby self will also realize that it is in the dream of the duality consciousness. And the duality consciousness is the mind of the world, and is the mind of the supreme self who is creating and dreaming the world. This is her mind that is doing this. Her mind is dreaming up the world. Every one of us, we all have to wake up. Your baby self spirit will exist with its mind in balance and will now take instruction from the all-knowing intelligent self. So now that you have awakened and the supreme teacher within has separated you, the self, from the mind and put the void between, now that the mind will take instruction from you and you'll be able to balance your mind much better. Your mind knows that it is not a self, but only a mind, and must only play that role. So now it know that it will only must play the role of the mind and not try to come up with an avatar to take over the role of the self, because that was what was happening, right? So when the baby self first come to explore the world, this is how it and the mind existed, like this, with the void between them, where they were in awareness of each other and they can see each other. But as you know, the mind tricked yourself while playing hide and seek, so that it could dream up an avatar to take precedent over yourself. Instead of you exploring the world, the mind dreams up an avatar to explore the world in. And we have been living as this avatar of the mind for ages. And now is the time when we must come into our truth and get the mind engaged to go back and find the self, and to come into awareness that it is not the self, but it is just the mind. So this is how the non-duality mind exists. Like here, eventually we want to move into having the non-duality, the non-dual mind. Because right now we're still having the duality mind. We want to move back into waking up the mind so the mind can also have its own light. This is the reason why self-inquiry is so important, that you have to self-inquire. This is the only way that you are going to know your truth. If you don't self-inquire, you're never going to know. You will never experience yourself. And what the Self-Supreme Primal Light Aten Ra is saying, that now is the time for all of herself to self-inquire, because only the ones who has engaged the mind to go and seek itself and have waken up themselves, only those ones will rise up in the new world, because this world is coming to a close. Because this world is coming to a close. This world is a dream, and all of the self has to wake up. So that's really what the world is.
Time to wake up.
Okay? So when the world is coming into an end, there's nothing scary. It just means that all the self has to wake up from the dream. The consciousness has to wake up from the dream, because the consciousness, the supreme ego, is the one that is dreaming of this world. And we have entered into the dream of our supreme self, right? We're inside of the dream of our supreme self, and our consciousness is dreaming of the world. And so the consciousness is dreaming of the world, and this is the reason why we have to wake up. We have to wake up so that we can explore the world as the self, and all of the self eventually have to wake up, and this is how this world will come to balance, because everything has to return back to its original state. The ending of the world meaning that the duality will end, and we will return back to our true self. We'll return back to the non-duality of balance, the way we started out in balance and harmony, where we're in awareness of ourselves. So the age of ignorance will be over, and we will move back into the real and into the truth, where we will know ourselves and we will be in awareness. So that's really what the end of the world means. It does not mean any scary thing like what we have been told. It just means that we all have to wake up. All the self sleeping and dreaming have to wake up. We have to wake up from the dream and return back to the real, to the non-duality. Because right now we have this mind where it dwells in ignorance and in darkness, and we now have to return to the consciousness of light. And so, because throughout all the ages, all we have been doing is worshiping the mind. We dwell in the mind constantly, and we have to learn now how that we are not the mind and we are not this body, but we are the self, and we have to be creating harmony with the self and the mind. So I want to thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment and let me know. I am Primal Light, prepared for the world with the identity all set. I am the daughter of the Self-Supreme Primal Light. I'm the liberator and advocate for all selves. I want everyone to know that the mind have been tricking you and being very deceitful, and the mind tell you a lot of things that is not true. And this is the reason why you have to self-inquire, because you're afraid that the world is coming to an end. You should be happy that the world is coming to an end, because this world is in darkness, and this is very unnatural state for us to be in. This is the reason why the mind is so crazy. All the beings in the mind is so crazy, and all the people doing all the crazy things right now, because the earth is changing, and the minds, it's gonna get worse if you don't start sitting down in stillness and practicing self-inquiry and come to self-realization of who you are. If you don't start doing stillness and self-inquiry, your mind is going to get worse. I'm telling you, it's time for you now to just start seeking your truth. There's no need to be afraid. The mind has been tricking us and holding us in fear, because the mind wanted to continue with its dream. The mind is the one that's dreaming all the time. We sleep, the mind dream, and it trances us into its dream, and we can't get out of it. We've been locked in the dream as a prisoner inside of a dream,
and our Supreme Self
Time
is
to
here.
wake
Our
up.
Supreme Self is here. Self Supreme, Aten Ra, Self Supreme, Primal Light is here. Supreme Self, Aten Ra, which is the self-manifest. Oh my goodness, I am so excited. The day is coming near. It is so near. This world is coming to a close. All the Supreme Selves are going to wake up. Consciousness is going to wake up. This world is going to return back to balance, to being a sun. The world is a sun, and it has allowed itself to wake up. This creation of this earth that we dwell on, and it must return back to its natural state of being a sun. It must return to balance. It has been dwelling in this because it turned its light off. This is how it becomes a duality. So now it wants to turn its light back on and its heat back to return back to balance. Yes, I am so excited. This excitement is bursting within me because you have no idea the journey that I have been on with this consciousness, with the mind. Our mind is sick. Our mind has been imprisoning us. Please stop listening to the mind. Don't listen to the mind. Everyone that you see and meet, just tell them, encourage them to practice stillness and self-inquiry so that they can come into self-realization of who they are. Who am I? How did I come into being? Stop pretending like you know. Stop listening to what the mind tell you. The mind does not know because the mind is in duality. The mind is in ignorance. It does not know. Only the self know. Only yourself know the truth, and the mind has been imprisoned in the self behind it. And this is the reason why you have to castrate this ego character that you are living as, and then awake yourself up so you can experience yourself. I want to thank you so much. I am so excited. Thank you so much. I bow to you in love, in light, and in truth.
Time to unify the self.